Just when you think the show can't get any funnier and just more entertaining, you see the grandpa just pretty much assume that his grandson is now discovering porn, and the thing that shocks him the most isn't like this over-exaggerated reaction, how dare you look at the naked body. He's just confused on why he's taking notes and is so serious, because most people are doing something very different. They don't have a notepad, they have something else in their hands. And this episode was basically wholesome ecchi. And I really enjoyed seeing how they portrayed both sides of this equation. You have Gojo, who has no relationship experience. He says in this episode, the only one who's ever been in his room was his grandpa. So therefore, he doesn't have that much experience with the ladies. And I mean, honestly, most high school people don't. Even if they're in a relationship, it's not really anything that you can really reference on your kind of work history list when you get into the adult life and things like that. But to see how he was like flustered without it being presented as like a lame fluster, I think you can look at a lot of harem main characters, a lot of even rom-com characters, and how they're like flustered about the relationship or the situations at hand. You can say, even though they're inexperienced, this is overboard even for this situation. Where with here, he literally has a barely dressed, very attractive woman in his room who very much has no chill, who is very confident in her body, is so confident that she can talk about the erotic game she plays and the shows she likes to watch, and not even blush at all. It wasn't until the very end of the episode that she even got embarrassed, and that's because, Gojo was starting to measure very close to certain areas. And to see how he goes from, like, the typical blushing to the almost out-of-body experience, like, I swear to God, this man had, like, multiple heart attacks and strokes. His soul left his body, did an orbit around the sun, came back, and, immediately left for the next adventure when he saw and got another taste of what's going on there. And then you have Marine, who just... It's amazing to see, because this is only the second time in recent anime memory where an anime has presented kink or sexual things and had it feel like they actually know how women act in the world. Horimiya, I think, did a great job with its central lead female and how they presented kinks and, the idea of sex life and things like that. And then you have this show right here with My Dress Up Darling. I think there's a very common misconception about just women in general. I mean, like, definitely in the high school era, just, like, that's the narrative, especially when I was in high school. Like, okay, guys are way more sexually deviant than females. And, of course, they wouldn't want to watch porn, or, no, they wouldn't want to indulge in this or that. But when you really talk with women more often than not, from my experience, all the women that I've come to know, I'm saying like, oh shit, like they're more interested in this shit than me half the time. And I like how it's not being presented as like, oh, she's this slut or this or that. It's just simply like, she's proud of what she likes and she's fine with flaunting it. I mean, there's so many times you get like, I honestly think if you were to take 100 anime in a school setting that dealt with anything sexual, you're probably going to get close to 100 where the female is presented as just, someone noble and pure, doesn't do anything naughty. The boys are the ones who want to do something. But the fact that, it's both sides of the equation. Both sides like sex. Both sides enjoy sexual things. And the fact that this episode ranged from just the idea of her gushing about some pretty taboo hentai tags, I'm not going to lie, like non-consensual rape, that got casually dropped in this episode, holy shit, to then even just the idea of the measurements and how, like, there's times where she definitely knows what she's doing, but for the most part, she's like, I'm in my bathing suit, calm down. I thought it was kind of interesting because there's a very good chance that something she could have picked from her wardrobe in terms of underwear would have been less seductive than her bathing suit, but the fact of the matter is, she was proud of what she did. Just the fact that she's like, hey, I already thought of everything. She comes over to his home because he says, we'll do this on Monday. Thinking of just how hard it was for him to take the measurements with no one home and them alone in that building, I'm just wondering how that would have worked at school. Just imagining the principal walking in, either overhearing some of the things that was said or just the measurement. It ain't gonna look good no matter how. But the fact of the matter is, it was just simply like, someone who had no real female experience, and the experience he had was just like talking casually with someone probably here or there, to then having a half-dressed woman who he very much is attracted to, but also respects in terms of, like, she's just passionate about what she enjoys, the same way he's passionate about what he enjoys. And that's why, he may not understand it, he may not like it the same way she does, But if she's passionate and given that same passion to what he likes to do with the Hina dolls, then who's he to judge? That's something I really liked about episode 1, is that there was a lack of judgment. There's confusion. There's a few eyebrows that get raised here or there, but there's no judgment. It's just two people who clearly understand that if someone is passionate about something, then go with it. I think one of the best details about the measurements is it wasn't just simply like fan service. It wasn't just, okay, here's her ass or here's her chest. Like, they focus on that, and they definitely play with Gojo's perspective, because, I mean, how the hell is he not supposed to, you know, have heartburn and have fever going through the roof? But there comes a point where she talks about, like, measuring her breasts, because when she does it, she gets different measurements every time. Had I not been in the relationship that I am right now, I would have been like, how does that work? But I mean, my fiance, she literally thought she was a size smaller until I met her, until we properly measured. So I completely understand how she's like, I actually need you to measure, because it does give you a different measurement every time, more often than not, especially if you're trying to do it yourself. It's a little fine details in the show that make it feel like it's not just someone guessing how things are, especially if they don't have experience in all the different elements that they're writing. It actually feels like a competent writer, and I mean, just the way the studio goes about portraying the seductive with just the natural teenage embarrassment, and the fact that they can even just so casually make that grandpa joke, because immediately when she handed over the games, I was like, okay, clearly this is going to be something that's going to, you know, get walked in on. I thought it was going to be like a cousin, a little sibling, like, I don't know, that's just kind of what anime typically does. But the fact that the grandpa just like opens it and you see this like purple kind of like pink lighting glowing and just radiating the room, I thought Gojo was going to be embarrassed. I thought it was going to be that typical scene. But the fact that he can look his grandpa in the eye and be like, oh, hey, what about dinner, you know? And I'm like, this man is so like focused on getting details for the dresses, he's completely oblivious to what's happening, which is exactly what happened in the first episode. He went from being super embarrassed about Marine just, you know, being in the room, very much, she's attractive and he's blushing for it. But when it came to like the critiquing of her cosplay, he switched. He didn't even realize that there was sexual things in his face. And the exact same thing happened in this episode with the grandfather basically being like, he's watching porn at the end of the day. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And he's so oblivious to the fact that that's actually an embarrassing situation, no matter how you string it and word it. And the fact that he just so casually dealt with that was kind of incredible. This show, I mean, it's kind of feeling like it's almost its own genre right now, because it almost is wholesome ecchi. They deal with the sexual aspects, they deal with the wholesome kind of like, will they, won't they relationship blossoming. But you really get a sense that like both of these characters stand tall. It's not like, oh, Gojo is just this pathetic character that we don't want to see. For me, Gojo's development might actually be the one I'm most interested in seeing, just because, I mean, from the 2 episodes that we've had of him, I think he's a great lead. He's not pathetic, he's not, you know, ridiculous. He feels genuine for his age, his situation, and I mean, anyone arguing at that age and doing that with no experience would behave differently. I mean, you're kidding yourself. This man's completely, you know, probably responding in the most natural without completely going overboard. They just have a little fun sometimes with the kind of like white face, kind of stone cracking design. And then Marine just is great as well. She's confident in who she is, but the fact that we got a taste of that embarrassment also shows that she isn't completely immune to the types of kind of like confusion that a character like Gojo might experience as well. Voice actors continuing to knock it out of the park. The presentation, I mean, I think there was even 3D in this episode sometimes with Gojo moving, but it was blended so seamlessly, I wasn't actually confident in that fact. It's just, this is a well put together production, and the manga had a lot of hype, and therefore the anime adaptation was getting a lot of hype. The preview gave a lot of confidence in it, and so far, the hype has been warranted. Thoughts and feelings on this week's episode of My Dress Up Darling. Favorite moment, what do you hope to see in episode 3 next week? Leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.